We're going to be talking about marketing ethics or creating social value through sustainable marketing. Traditionally, we think of sustainability in terms of either environmental sustainability and the idea that we need to protect environment, we need to protect air and water and land, or sometimes we think about it in terms of economic sustainability, the idea that we have to otherwise get revenues in to keep the lights on. However, we can incorporate both of those as well as social sustainability when looking at the idea of the long-term future of an organization. And yes, environmental and social issues can overlap for an organization. Environmental and economic issues can overlap for an organization, as well as socioeconomic issues overlap as well. And in the middle, we see here is sustainability. One colleague of ours had defined sustainable marketing by taking the definition traditionally used in marketing and adding on a few things that incorporate sustainability directly onto that traditional definition. And Lund defines sustainable marketing as the strategic creation, communication, delivery, and exchange of offerings that produce value through consumption behaviors, business practices, and the marketplace, while lowering harm to the environment and ethically and equitably increasing the quality of life and well-being of consumers and global stakeholders presently and for future generations. What Lund essentially does is take elements of the marketing definition, such as the creation, communication, delivery, and exchange of offerings. Those things are tending to be at the core of what marketing is. And he adds on the elements of lowering harm to the environment, which we think about from an ecological standpoint. He talks about ethical and equitable, increasing the quality of life and well-being of consumers and stakeholders. That we would consider from a social standpoint. And he talks about the idea of present and future generations. In other words, it's not enough to keep the lights on now, but also to keep the lights on in the future and do all of these things in conjunction with each other. So in that regard, I would say that sustainable marketing is really kind of what marketers should be focused on to begin with when we think about what marketing as a field does. In my own research, this is something that excites me to be able to look at issues where we can increase quality of life and lower harm to the environment through marketplace behaviors. When marketers are looking at incorporating these concepts of sustainability and sustainable marketing, there are two facets to decision making. The first is morality, which is what is right and what is wrong. But the second is perhaps more importantly and more difficult to kind of wrap our heads around, the ethical elements, which is to say, what are the values and the principles and the norms of things that other stakeholders are using in their decision-making process and that we can be using in our own decision-making processes on behalf of an organization. It can be very challenging to look at ethics in terms of balancing our own needs versus what is going on in the world around us, balancing what the firm needs are versus what society is demanding, and even more importantly, balancing the short-term versus the long-term interest. Remember, the definition of sustainable marketing as we had just defined it incorporates what is going on both in the present but also for future generations. So this makes us have to take a look at what we think is not just right and wrong, but where norms are, where principles are, and how things should be considered when making ethical judgments in marketing strategy. A stakeholder orientation considers the concerns of both primary and secondary stakeholders. Stakeholders are not just inclusive of shareholders, but are also inclusive of a variety of other organizations or individuals with whom the company may either directly impact or have an indirect impact. All of these different types of stakeholders have some sort of stake or concerns relative to the firm. What we're started to be seeing in recent years is that companies are looking and trying to consider not just the shareholders, but these stakeholders, such as what competitors are also doing in terms of ecological sustainability, what interest groups and advocacy groups are otherwise saying that they want to see out of companies, and trying to interact with those demands and those concerns to balance out what is present and for future generations, what lowers harm to the environment, but also considers the ethics and equitability within the marketplace. Because sometimes consumers or other folks that are not necessarily your customers now maybe your customers later on as you are otherwise demonstrating your concerns and your willingness to address their concerns. One category of companies that is really kind of taking this challenge head on are what we call certified B corporations. These certified B corporations, as you may see here, several brands of which may know, Patagonia you may have heard of, Ben and Jerry's I think most of us have heard of, Seventh Generation. Many of them are leveraging a certification status that shows that they are offering public benefit beyond just shareholder returns, right? One of the things that they're looking at is to say, here are 5 different elements, 5 different areas that you should be addressing, whether it is your corporate governance structures, whether it is how you treat your employees, whether it is how you treat your customers, whether it is how you treat the environment. All of these things are otherwise measured in an assessment, and there is an impact report and score that is otherwise publicly available for certified B corporations. What we've seen over the years is a number of companies that are either founding or transforming to become certified B corporations. One of these companies that you may know of is Allbirds. Allbirds is a New Zealand-based company that has a multi-billion-dollar organization that is creating shoes that are both ecologically friendly, socially friendly, and also selling well as a significant brand. This brand is currently certified as a B Corporation, showing their public benefit status both formally and informally to consumers and other stakeholders. So I might pose the question, what is the value of a certified B Corporation status? Is it worth the various time, money, and even labor costs to maintain this status? What does it mean to primary and secondary stakeholders? What does it mean for primary and secondary stakeholders? And as we think about going forward, what the definition of sustainable marketing is, we can consider how these judgments are being made based on managerial and strategic decision-making processes in marketing ethics.